Welcome to the Cultural Curriculum Chat, where we will dive deep into this captivating folkloric tale that transcends time and place. Today, join us as we uncover the remarkable story of Kape'e Mahu, a mystical journey of a dual male and female spirit traveling from Tahiti to Hawaii, armed with awe-inspiring healing powers. So stay tuned for this episode filled with magic, folklore, and the enduring power of legends. Hello, everyone. My name is Jeba Edmonds, and welcome to the Cultural Curriculum Chat podcast. And if you're watching me on YouTube, Mrs. Edmonds Cultural Corner. Now, this story is riveting, and it has both historical connotations with folklore and magic, and I know your students are going to want to enjoy themselves. The book is titled Kape'e Mahu, and it is written by Hina Ale'e, Moana Wong-Kalu, Dean Hamer, and Jill Wilson, illustrated by Daniel Sousa. Now, I apologize if the pronunciation might be a little off, but I am going to practice while I keep going. I love this book. It is about four human beings from Tahiti, and they possess the power of both mind, body, and spirit, and they were dual spirited as well, with male and female spirits in their hearts and in their minds and in their bodies. And they left Tahiti, the four of them, and ventured off into the beaches of Waikiki in Hawaii. Now, each of them were visitors that seemed towering and intimidating, but they possessed a soft-spoken and gentle spirit. They came for lots of reasons of healing the people in Waikiki. And what I loved about it with the name of Mahu, it is a term that talked about two-spirited people, two-spirited beings. You see that in a lot of indigenous cultures of people that have two spirits. And I love how the leader of the group of the Kape'e Mahu were the gods that favored in this book. It says, four visitors with the skill and the science of healing. And Kapuni possessed the great spiritual power. And the second healer was Kinohai, who saw the ailments in seeing and healed through sight. Kahaloa could heal from afar. And Kape'e Mahu, who was the leader of the group, healed with laying their hands on the human being. Now, this book talks about they carried wisdom with them, they carried advice, they carried wonderful healing powers and cures and in science and just the people of Waikiki in Hawaii really did admire and view them all as very sacred beings. There is a point in the story where the Mahu people went up to Bell Rock and brought down 4 big healer stones. And I don't want to give away too much about it, but the Kape'e Mahu people, the Mahu people, came with their dual spirits and their power of healing, and they did this wonderful ceremony that lasted a full moon by praying and possessing their power over these healer stones. And it remained sacred for centuries, hundreds and hundreds of years. These stones were a sacred site. They were revered with all of the people of that island nation. And with colonialism and missionaries and government overthrowing and taking over, and tourism and statehood, those healer stones started to be erased by being pushed aside, literally being buried. You're going to learn about, with your students, where they buried them. Here's a hint. Pins that are white and a big bowling ball. Yep. It was buried under a bowling alley, y'all. Yes. And so it wasn't until much later that it was recovered and brought to a very popular square in the area in Hawaii. And it seems to be, and when I want you to read this, educators, look into the connotations of why other people's perception of what is sacred and true is not perceived through a lot of people's lenses. So when we're talking about Indigenous peoples and their sacred rituals and their sacred healing powers, a lot of people who don't realize that tend to push it over somewhere else, erase the historical connotation, they erase the oral history about it. And so the Indigenous people are starting to really speak up even more and elevate and amplify their voice, and using that true history of power that these stones still hold as a living power. Now that you can find these 4 healer stones, a lot of people don't even know what they mean if they don't take into account the historical context of these 4 sacred stones. The author does a wonderful job. The authors do a wonderful job in having both the translation of the Olelo Nihau, which is a form of the Hawaiian language spoken by the Indigenous people of the Hawaiian dialect, one of the many Hawaiian dialects, into the story. The author's note said that this must have been one of the most accurate depicted dialects of the time when the Kape'e Mahu and the other Mahu beings came from Tahiti. So they tried to make it as accurate as possible for the readers to understand. And of course, it does have the English language interpretation below. It is such a powerful book, to say the least. And the native beings, the Indigenous beings, talk a lot more in the author's notes about the 3rd gender identities, and it was once respected in the past in Indigenous cultures, and now it's more of a target of, and I quote, hatred and discrimination. So the first author wanted our young people, and I quote, to understand that the ability to embrace both the male and female aspects of their spirit is not a weakness, but a strength, a reason to rejoice and not fear, end quote. They even filmed a wonderful short documentary. So it's a wonderful short animated film too as well. So I highly recommend reading this book, understanding gender fluidity when we're talking about intersectionality in our classroom structure. Kape'e Mahu is a wonderful tale that is true with some folkloric, with some folkloric tendencies, as well as magic. That's all I have to say. It is a magical book, y'all. And I really enjoyed it. And I learned so many historical contexts inside this book that I didn't know existed. And I remember being on the beaches in Waikiki and I really remember on the beaches of Waikiki the influence of the indigenous people. And once you unearth and understand the history of multiple beings that carry multiple spirits and healing powers, the more you can enjoy and understand the cultural norms and traditions that still resonate today. So I highly recommend getting this book, Kape'e Mahu, by Hina Ale'e, Moana Wong-Kalu, Dean Hamer, and Joe Wilson, illustrated by Daniel Sousa. Award-winning authors, award-winning book. You need this on your shelves, and watch that short animated film as well to pair with this book so your students can really understand the meaning behind this book. So before I go, I want you to be a part of my community of breaking down barriers and creating a culture of multicultural educational resources and tools. Don't forget to subscribe in the link below so you get first and foremost notice on a new episode that drops. So even ring that notification bell so you get it in real time. Thanks again for joining us on the Cultural Curriculum Chat and Mrs. Edmonds Cultural Corner. I look forward to seeing you here same time next week. Bye-bye.